Hello and welcome to the Pixel Scandal Nerdcast, episode 29. I'm Kurt.
End of line.
Nightson.
Oh, I have to mute.
Oreztes, you're up next.
You.
How
Hi.
you doing?
Gigett.
And I am Handor. There's always
All
someone.
right. We did it. We did the intros, y'all.
You didn't give me the order of operations before we started, so I don't know where I am, because...
It's in the show doc.
That's okay. Hey, Kurt, where can people find us?
Hey, people can find us all over the internet if they want to. They can find us by going to pixelscandal.com. They can find us and watch us live at twitch.tv/pixelscandal. They can watch our past videos on YouTube by searching Pixel Scandal. And if they like watching our stuff on YouTube, they should subscribe over there, because then we'll get a vanity URL if we hit 100 subscribers over there. They can listen to us as an audio feed in the pod catcher of their choice. Don't
Pod
say
Turkey.
it. I talked over it, so you didn't hear it. Or you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Sometimes I do Facebook Lives when I'm feeling frisky. That's all sorts of stuff.
Sure.
And if you want to contact us because you don't want me to say the word frisky anymore, you just email us, pixelscandal@gmail.com.
BRB.
Excuse me, I'm writing that email right now.
I was going to say,
I need a minute.
I'm sending an email as well.
Well, cool. Our spotlight... Sorry, I have a cough drop in my mouth. Our spotlight topic for tonight will be how to be a good player in RPG games, which we'll be getting to a little bit later in the show. But right now, end of line, do we have any announcements?
So many announcements. This announcements list is getting too long. We need to stop doing stuff.
No, it can only get bigger.
It will be getting
that's
bigger.
what's-
It's making me nervous. All right,
That is literally what she said.
Sunday
That is what I
night, we will be playing the
Aw.
last Shadowrun Boston Lockdown game.
The last one.
Why is that, Kurt?
Because they are shutting down the servers because they lost their licensing.
Yep.
Thanks, Microsoft.
No more Shadowrun Boston Lockdown. Servers are going on, getting sunset. So Kurt and Nightson will be playing that tomorrow. So that'll be at 2 p.m., a little earlier than normal. So if you want to check that out, 2 p.m. tomorrow on our Twitch channel.
Try to see a game that you can't ever play after next week.
Ooh.
Come say goodbye to Boston Lockdown with us.
There's going to be some way to continue playing that.
Well, they have announced that they are going to actually release the source code to the game and just say, if you want to face Microsoft, you do what you want.
Yeah, someone will.
All right.
All right, cool.
Pixel Plays, our playthrough of We Were Here Too, which is released on Thursdays. Our third episode is up on YouTube now. Our final episode will be uploaded this week, where Handor and I will wrap it up. Will he or I or both survive? You'll have to check out the YouTube video to find out. This last episode 3, I've gotten a few messages from. It was a little stressful. This one was probably the most stressful one, where Handor and I were about to claw each other's eyes out over the internet.
Let me guess, the maze?
It was the maze. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The maze had a lot of, you son of a bitch! Anyway.
I
Check
swear,
that out.
Gigett forgot where her lefts and rights were at 2 in the
No.
morning. And we just went, all right, we're done.
So that's the thing. When he was down there, he's all yelling at me like it's supposed to get any easier, right? And I'm trying to come up with the best way to describe, to navigate somebody through that. And I just I couldn't. There was so much pressure.
I'm going to let everyone watch the show and form your own opinions about why Handor is wrong. So the next Pixel Plays is for Hitman 2. Is also released on Tuesdays. Episode 2 of Hitman 2 was also
this will be 3.
released. Oh, this will be 3.
yeah.
Sorry, coming this Tuesday will be the 3, right?
Yeah.
So definitely check that out.
Yes.
Pixel Scandal side quests Saturday, December 1st at 9 a.m. Super excited. Tales from the Loop, run by C.A. Dave of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. Yeah, this is a game that Kurt kind of brought to us a long time ago, and we were really excited to get to check it out. It was actually one I particularly wanted to play, but we never really got into it. I know you bought the source material. But anyway, December 1st, we're going to be playing that.
I have 2 of the books.
2 of the books. Oh, yeah, there's a sequel. That's where we got some of our material for our promo video.
Hey, that is you.
Yeah, that is you in the chat,
In the chat.
to Dave.
Yeah. Welcome.
Are you
Jeff.
gonna share our super awesome thing with all of our viewers right now?
Oh yeah, we're gonna play our promo real quick.
We're gonna see if it works.
We'll see if this works. All right.
All right.
Here we go.
This is a test.
Yay! That was the promo.
Hooray!
Yay!
Didn't crash OBS.
It worked.
Yeah, so that's gonna be December 1st. We're gonna all be
That's next weekend.
playing. Yeah, it's so quick. It snuck up on us.
I'm so excited.
Our next Dungeon World game is going to be December 8th. That's going to be at 9 a.m. Yeah, come and find out what happens to our heroes. I don't want to spoil what happened in the last game, but there were some changes. So curious to see what's going to happen to the adventurers after some changes and restructuring.
Awesome.
That'll be interesting.
Well, cool. And you can always go and check out all of our scheduling and stuff on our website at pixelscandal.com. Website. I'm having trouble talking tonight. We have an events page that tells you when all our things are, which I totally did. So I'm very excited. Everybody should go do it and look at it and be like, ooh, cool, Gigett did a thing.
I'm gonna go look at it. Go look at it.
So let's move into what we're excited about. I have the first thing, which is I'm excited about Christmas, which I can talk about Christmas because it's after Thanksgiving, and that is the rule that Kurt has laid down for me that I cannot explode with Christmas until after Thanksgiving.
Can I
And
give
it
you a
is
little
after
tip,
Thanksgiving.
Gidget?
Yes.
If you move to Canada, you could then celebrate Christmas a whole month earlier.
I know, when you told me that, I was so excited. Oh my God. If I was Canadian, this would be amazing.
Why,
So Christmas,
Thanksgiving?
Our
No,
Thanksgiving's in
Thanksgiving's-
October.
it's in October. So as
People-
soon as
When is your
Halloween's
Halloween?
over,
Basically, people take
Halloween.
down their Halloween decorations, and they're like, fuck it, I'm already outside. I'm just going to put up the Christmas stuff now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that.
But Halloween is
Yeah.
the only thing that holds Christmas at bay from the rest of the year.
It's still
So-
doing that.
in our house, a little bit yesterday, but mostly today, Christmas has exploded in our house, which I'm very excited about. You can see the Christmas porg right there with a Christmas hat on. But yeah, that's the thing I'm excited about. I can start being all Christmassy. So woohoo, Christmas! All right, go ahead.
Wildly chucking Christmas grenades all over your house.
Holiday bukkake time.
Yeah. Gross.
Whoa. Okay.
All
And
right.
we hit 11.
8 gingerbread men will do. All right, so I'm excited about PvP. The webcomic is having a Kickstarter for the PvP Definitive Collection, which is 8 hardback books plus a 20th anniversary book, because apparently it's in 20 years. They started in 98. I started reading in like 03 or 04 or something like that.
I think it was the year I was pregnant with our child.
Yeah. So it was like 03. I started reading that. Crazy that
leave
it's
the wrong
been
week.
so long for that comic. But yeah, I just love Scott Kurtz, and so I wanna support him. One of my profile pic almost everywhere on the internet is the commission I got from him of one of my D&D characters, and one of my favorite possessions is my little troll, is my skull doll.
That Oreztes got you.
Yeah, that Oreztes got me from PAX. Got it signed, and it lives in my office.
Yeah,
So,
as soon as
yeah,
I get
that's what
into
I'm
my
excited
storage
about.
unit, I might have some more old PvP crap for you.
Ooh.
Yay!
Not crap. It's not crap, but it's,
Well, because
I don't
Oreztes
have a place for it.
hates PvP so much he won't even
I
read the
do.
comic.
No, I started reading it and I was like, PvP, what does this mean? And then I discovered it and I was like, oh, well, I can't enjoy this content any longer.
I think we decided if something is crap if it's in a storage unit, but once you take it out, it becomes stuff again. Is that how that works? Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Oreztes, you have the next thing you're excited about.
Do I?
Yeah.
Oh yes, that thing. It's Dragon's Crown Pro. I got this today at the store. I'm gonna try to figure out how to do some couch co-op with that. It's like it's an Atlas game, which if you're a fan of like weeaboo Japanese anime inspired art
So
styles
many
and
people
video
out there are gonna
games.
be. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially
I
our
love
viewers.
Atlas. Yeah, I love Atlas. I collect Atlas games. I love all their stuff. But yeah, it reminds me of like the old Dungeons and Dragons Shadows over Mystara,
Mhm.
4-player on.
Holy light! Holy light! Holy light!
Yeah,
Holy light!
except it doesn't freeze the screen for everybody else.
Oh, well then I'm out. I'm not interested. If I can't lock everyone else out of playing for 6 hours straight.
Yeah. But there is the option to cook meals in between stages that provide buffs for your party. So it's like a cooking mama sim also. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to
Nice.
stream. I'm gonna be working on getting PlayStation 4 streams and then maybe do some couch co-op of that.
Awesome.
Nice.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, it'll
Nightson.
definitely be cool to get some console action on Pixel Scandal.
All right,
that's my
Nightson,
logic.
you're up next.
Well, this is interestingly apparently mine, even though Gigett was the one who declared it not 5 minutes before the show started.
I wrote
Right.
it in. I wrote it in
Right.
there.
Oh, was it? Were you the one that wrote it? I was like, I don't know who wrote this.
So we have decided one of our long-standing goals, basically from the day that we formed this channel, was we
Oh.
wanted to do a Portal 2 race.
Yes, that's what this is. Okay. I was like,
And-
what
and-
the hell is this?
And basically, the idea would be myself and Gigett, who are long-standing Portal fans and long-standing puzzle fans in general.
Yeah.
We have never done the co-op aspect of it. We haven't
Which
touched
is
it once.
crazy. So crazy to me that we haven't touched it.
We've talked about it about 130 times, and then about a year ago, we're like, we should definitely. Actually, why don't we make content? So, so we decided we'd do that, but why not up the stakes a little bit? And so to counter that, we're gonna have Handor, who has already played, so has a very strong boost to any capabilities of being able to beat us. We're gonna pair him with Kurt.
Who's never played any Portal ever.
I have played a little bit.
Can we talk about temperaments?
Hey,
Talk
I love
about-
puzzles, y'all. If you know me, you know I just adore puzzles. They're my
into the-
fave.
Go into the temperaments, Nightson.
I think everyone will be helpful and cooperative, and I think it will
Okay.
be a very good and clean race.
Yeah,
Good, clean
totally.
fun. Yeah, everybody have some. Oh, hey,
So
good. It's
plan-
gonna be some good, clean fun.
Good,
So
clean fun.
Oreztes and I get to I guess we're gonna be the shoutcasters for this.
Oh, that'd be
We
awesome.
hadn't thought of that, but I love this.
That is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
would
we're
be
totally
great.
gonna shoutcast.
So now that we've announced this, it's now something we have to do.
Yes.
Um, and so now we need to figure out how we're going to do it and when. Now literally you've thrown a wrench into the gears here. Crap.
We'll
and-
figure it out, but it's going to be amazing, and we'll definitely be incorporating it into our Sunday night game nights starting next weekend. So we will definitely have all our kinks worked out and figure out how we're going to make this all happen starting the first Sunday in December.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I found something out. You can use OBS as a webcam, which means you can
Ooh.
set up a scene and send that through as a webcam. The
Well,
other person
my
can pull that
thought-
into OBS.
My thought is we will deploy ours to Endo and/or Oreztes,
Mhm.
and then they can produce it live and
Yeah.
There you
So
go.
we'll each send ours as a webcam, and then they'll use that to build scenes out of.
There we
Yeah,
go.
that'll be good.
Well, cool. Let's move on into what we've played recently. Kurt, why don't you talk to us about what you did last weekend real quick?
Oh yeah. Oh man. Okay. So I got to do the most amazing thing last weekend.
in 6 rolls or less.
Gidget and I drove to Los Angeles to support a great charity, Rainbow Railroad,
You're out
which
of words.
helps get LGBTQIA plus folks out of oppressive governments that would otherwise torture or hurt them, or where they can't go anywhere for help because the help would be the one harming them. And so we drove down to LA to join the Happy Jacks RPG Rainbow Railroading stream. They had a 24-hour charity stream event where they
talked about it a bunch.
Huh?
We've talked about it.
We've talked about it a bunch. So I went down and I ran Nuclear Night School in the 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. slot with Kadave and Abria and Bernadette and Joy. Two of those players had either never played. I think Bernadette had never played an RPG before, and Joy had maybe played D&D a couple times. And so it was a real interesting mix of players. We told a really fun story, and so if you want to watch that,
pay to tell Kurt he sucks, which is awesome.
Yes, people got to tell me I suck for $5. And the charity is still open, so you can go to happyjacks.org/rainbow, and you can still donate if that charity seems interesting to you, or you want to.
In fact, we're still offering that deal. You can still tell Kurt he sucks for $5.
I was just
$5
about
donations.
That will be active for the rest of the year.
Right.
When we roll over to 2019, it will go up to $6.50. So get it now.
Get it now while you can, guys.
Yeah.
We will definitely go check though, and if there are $5 donations, then
they will scream that I suck.
We will scream Kurt sucks on our next podcast for you.
Yeah.
So cool. Who I'm guessing this is not, and you guys didn't put your names on these things. Who played Hitman 2? I'm guessing it's you.
Yes. So, so just to catch you guys up a little, Hitman, since they did the re-release 2 years ago, they added timed content. They're called elusive targets. You have like 2 weeks. Here's your target. Go kill him. And it's the weird thing about it is you get one tap. If you die or the target dies, that's it. So if you don't make it out in that one attempt, you lost your chance to kill him and make it away clean and get your reward and do all that. So you only get one attempt. So I decided I would film that today, and the target in question is played by Sean Bean.
Of course it is.
Nice.
So he just starts the match dead?
Did you have to kill him, or did he die on his own accord?
And so, yeah. I actually looked up a whole bunch of really weird facts about his death count, and I won't ruin them here.
Gidget's threatening to draw stuff on my face. I'm sorry, it's hard to pay attention.
Hold on, I'll send you this dick butt template.
But so the idea was I was going to record it, and I was going to play through it, and it was going to be nice and calm. I didn't want to screw up. And then an opportunity presented itself, and I had to take it, and it went to hell, really, really fast.
Can't wait to see. I can't wait to see.
So hope depending on how tomorrow goes, I might just do it as a bonus episode.
Okay.
Nice.
And put it out early, but we'll see about that. So I had a lot of fun with that.
That's awesome.
Cool.
So far with the Hitman 2 titles, we've got That's a Paddlin'.
Yep.
And then
Totally
we've
innocent
got
flamingo.
Yeah, Totally Innocent Flamingo or whatever.
Yeah, I think.
I'm loving these titles, guys.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
What's this Sean Bean one going to be called?
Yeah.
He was dead when I got there?
Nice. All right, so Oreztes, I think you're the one who drug this back into the group. You played
Secret World?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing it. I started it last week. Played a little bit with Nightson and Endaline a few times. Just did like a couple of dungeons, trying to get back into it. The controls are, I don't remember it. You know.
Well, you only played the new version.
Yeah, a little
like
bit.
for a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
And so rather than like the action RPG or action MMO version rather than the traditional tab targeting MMO is very different and kind of hard to get used to.
Yeah.
It is very different.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I haven't had a lot of time to mess with it. This past week has been busy with Thanksgiving and all that stuff, but probably get back into it. I like it. It's fun.
Yeah, I think we all played Eat Too Much Food this week. I think that's the consistent game we all played. Well, cool. Well, we all got together twice this week and played Sentinels of the Multiverse, thanks to Oreztes.
Everybody-
For 6 hours.
If you
Everyone except
follow
for
us on
Handor.
Instagram, you got
Wow.
to see the pictures of that Sentinels of the Multiverse complete collector's box, which is insanely huge.
You can find those on our Instagram or on our gallery on our website. But yeah, that box is ridiculous. Like I had to rearrange all of our board games to make room for that box. It's so big. It's pretty amazing. But last night we played the Sentinels raid, which
It's
was
Oblivion.
crazy.
Yeah, Oblivion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oblivion.
Yeah, I would never bother to make the distinction of that and just call it Oblivion.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was huge, and we played for like 6 hours. And
It was a long game.
It was super amazing.
Yeah, I want to do that one more time on stream once we get everything set up. Maybe like once Handor comes to visit, we'll make him.
Yay!
Yeah,
deal
because
with
that
it.
game definitely needs a +1.
Yeah.
Well,
No, but I mean, if we record it, that's like 12 weeks of content, just one game.
I will,
Yes.
hands down, if we run that again, I will sit out and I'll just run the bosses because
I
that
think
is.
you might
Yeah,
have
there were a
to,
lot of
'cause
bosses.
That was insane. That was crazy.
It's I actually played again today with not the raid, but I played again today with Kurt. We just picked like a random boss because I wanted to try.
Yep, that's right, guys. He played with himself.
Well, with the kid, I wanted to try.
You call it
I wanted-
the kid?
I wanted to try the same character with less people to see if it like suffered or really needed all that stuff. No, it's broken. That character is broken.
That tree character is crazy.
Yeah, I had like 20 cards on the table by like round 5 or
Yeah, it
something
was
stupid like that.
So Handor, I'm guessing this one's you.
Fallout 76.
Yes.
Yeah, still playing that. Still trying to get my $60 out of it, and it's. I mean,
Don't you mean your $40?
Yeah, fuck those guys for discounting it this week. That sucks.
Oh, I am. If I could return the game out of spite at this point, like I was fine with its bugginess and some of the issues with it, and I was just gonna roll with it, and I'd probably come back to it in 6 months when once they got it cleaned up a little bit. But dropping the price $20 a week after release is
That's
dirty. It is
Yeah.
a blatant cash grab, and
Yeah. The reviews
They
are
should be
starting to get
ashamed.
out. The reviews are getting out. And they're like, this is a sinking ship, guys. We need to get
Yeah.
as much cash out of this as we can now before it's too late.
and it speaks volumes on what we can expect in the future from them.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yep.
It's too bad.
And
Well,
there's
no,
so
go
many
ahead.
reports of like bugs and glitches and
Oh, man.
everything, and they don't even care. Like there was somebody whose character got stuck in God mode, 0 hit points, could not take any damage, could not get killed, nothing. Just walking around, just destroying everything. And they reported it, bug reported, and they got their canned generic response like, "Oh, if you're having issues with the status of your character, try logging out and back in."
Well,
Yeah.
because they're treating it like a single player game.
They are. It's
They don't-
not. It's irrelevant.
Yeah. There's
I
infinite
understand that, though.
XP glitches out there right now where you could just hold a button down and just get infinite experience, and I fully plan on taking advantage of one of those later tonight.
Yep. Well, let's bring the podcast here back up to, or the Nerdcast here back up to a positive high note here.
sorry about that.
No, it's cool. And let's move into our spotlight topic
Spotlight topic.
on how to be a good player in RPGs.
All right.
So, Kurt, why don't you
I'll lead us in.
why don't you lead us in with what we're going to be talking about tonight?
So the reason I chose this topic specifically is because there are tons of GM advice shows out there, and there are not a lot of player advice shows out there. And so I kind of wanted to just do what are some tips or some advice that we have for how to be a good player in tabletop games, in tabletop RPGs specifically. And so the one big thing here, if you're new to RPGs or you are a new player and something on here seems intimidating, don't consider any of these items a barrier to entry to the hobby. Like, you do not have to be a master of anything we say. of course, and we're just people on the internet, so ignore us if you want. But don't consider anything that we're going to say as like a barrier to entry.
I feel like it's important to say that we all ignore Kurt quite a bit.
Yeah, they ignore me all the time.
So.
And this is largely opinion too. So
oh yeah, all of this is opinion. So we're gonna kind of go through some of the things that we think make someone a good player, and how you might achieve those things.
You can, honestly, you could sum up this whole thing with just explaining how well I play when you DM'd Dungeon World.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll try to use you as an example.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the first thing here that I have is active listening, which is a skill that is difficult to master and something I constantly struggle with. And I would love if Gigett could explain what active listening is for everybody.
All right. So active listening is more than just listening to a person talk. It's paying attention to the person's body language, the emotions they're giving behind what they're saying, and actually paying attention to the words that are coming out of people's mouths. When I teach active listening, I try to stress the need to pay attention to people's body languages, the person that's talking to you, and your own body language. And so if you're giving a lot of really aggressive behavior, then paying attention to, oh, hey, this is the message I'm sending, but also paying attention to the other people around you. So if you're at a table with a bunch of RPG people and you're role playing and somebody, starts to tense up or whatever because they're obviously becoming uncomfortable with whatever's going on, you need to actively be paying attention to the people around you, right? So it's not just paying attention to the words, but also the body language and the emotions of the people around you. But the listening part is the most important part, I think, with RPGs, because if you're not actively listening to everybody else at the table, then you're not giving them the same spotlight or the same attention that you are wanting to get from them as well. Mm-hmm. So that is how I think active listening works in this context.
So what are some, like, do you guys have any like examples of like maybe behaviors that are counter to active listening, or ways that you've seen active listening like help in an RPG?
Well, a lot of RPGs are about detail. Like if you're discussing a location, or you're discussing a treasure, or someplace you want to go, or something about a character that's going to come back on the storyline, using that strategy will definitely help you. It'll also immerse you in the story. Gigett tends to like to take a lot of notes for that reason, so she'll really be very careful. If the GM kind of says something that's a little bit more highlighted in a phrase than you would normally expect, it's probably him dropping you a hint that something's going to come up later, where understanding the intentions or motives of a character later could help you navigate a particularly hairy situation. So Gigett, for instance, will usually kind of be that guidance for us, where she'll take detailed notes if something comes up, and that she does that because she's very active and conscious about what's going on and what's being explained.
And I think that's a really good point. The reason I take notes is because I'm great at active listening and I'm horrible at remembering details. And so I'm listening and I'm paying attention, but that is going to go in and out, even though I'm really trying hard to pay attention. And so for myself, I have to take notes. And then I assume that other people at the table are the same way I am, that, yeah, we're all paying attention and we're all listening. But 2 games from now, when that, oh, hey, what was that thing that came up that was so important? It's like, well, let's go to the notes.
That could be a month later.
Yeah, right. It could be a month later or 2 or 6 or whatever. But I think a big part of active listening in RPGs is taking notes. I think that can be incorporated into active listening. Because a part of active listening is repeating back what you hear, or at least when you use it conversationally and not in RPGs. And I think the way that transitions into RPGs is taking notes, right? In a normal conversation, you would repeat to make sure you got the information right. But in RPGs, you write it down so that you got it right for that game 6 sessions from now when it becomes important.
I think the benefit of that, if you're striving for that, towards like that level of active listening, is you automatically eliminate a lot of poor player behaviors. Like, when people would say people's turns are taking too long and you're looking at your phone. Well, if you're active listening, if you're paying attention to what's going on at the table and trying to internalize everything that's happening, then you're not going to have time to look at your phone or be distracted or whatever that is. So,
Right.
I think that's just by striving to hit that active listening, you're gonna eliminate a ton of player behaviors that people would consider negative, right? Without even having to have a full list of don't do this, don't do that. Just strive to always be paying attention and internalizing the things that you're hearing.
It's actually something that I hear Oreztes say quite a bit when we're playing. We don't have this problem so much when we're sitting here playing online and we're streaming, but when we're around the table, Oreztes, you tend to be the one that's like, put your phone away, no electronics at the table, which I love that you're kind of the person that champions that, because somebody's got to, right? Like, somebody's got to be like, hey, if you're staring at your phone, you're not paying attention, you're not active listening, you're not engaged in what we're all doing together. And so I always love it that you're kind of like the put that away person at our table, because somebody's got to do that, right?
Well, I mean, in my defense, that's just because if you're paying attention to your phone, your turn's going to take longer, and then I'm going to forget what I want to do on my turn. So you need to speed it up so I can do my awesome thing.
And I think that's
purely selfish.
No, I think even if that's the reason, it's still important that we're all paying attention, because if kind of like in Sentinels last night, if someone's turn is taking half an hour and then the next person's turn takes 2 minutes.
Yeah, Kurt.
In all honesty, aren't we all kind of, I mean, to take off what Oreztes is saying, but in all honesty, aren't we all really just doing that selfishly, right? We're doing these, we kind of do the RP thing for a selfish, it's a desire or need or want. And
I think to some point it is, because we're all wanting to enjoy the experience that we're having, and if somebody's not as engaged, then your fun gets impeded in some way, whatever your fun is, right? And so I think it's important to, sometimes it is selfish, but it's okay because it's at the betterment of the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you guys think you can use using reading and using body language in an RPG? Like, what should you be looking for? We're talking about active listening, so we're going to talk about body language. What are the kinds of things that you would use in reading and using body language in an RPG?
Middle finger, 100%. When they try and charge a mob and the DM says, sorry, that's a DC 40, just give them the middle finger.
I know with Forrest, when I'm trying to collaborate with Adelaide, Gigett, and especially with the last couple episodes, trying to figure out where is Forrest going to go with this. And a lot of what I do is I'm reading your body language to see, and then I see what you do with Adelaide,
right?
Of course. So I'm definitely mirroring a lot of that and bouncing that off.
And
being able to do that.
I think I do the same thing with you, because I mean, like you said, with Adelaide and Forrest, like we're doing this dance, but we also don't want to make each other uncomfortable as people, like you and I. And so we're very much like watching each other's body language to make sure we're not crossing like a friendship line here to make each other uncomfortable, but also continue to play the narrative of the story. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
That's the hardest thing
for me to do, like romance in between characters in role-playing games, because it's like, we're friends, and I don't know if I'm comfortable with a relationship that is more than friends, even if it is just the characters that we're playing.
Right.
So for me, like, romance between characters is just like I tend to avoid it. Most part.
I guess maybe it's my lack of role-playing experience that allows me to completely separate the two, I guess. Or maybe it's just the fact that I'm a sociopath. So that
I don't know that that's it. I mean, I actually separate the two, like you would if you were doing if you were in a show, like if you were in a play, you wouldn't suddenly develop romantic feelings for someone because you had a romantic scene with them.
Right.
And
You mean
so
Which
Brad Pitt and
okay,
Angelina Jolie.
not all the time, right?
Well, here's the thing. We're getting into the weeds here a little bit because we're gonna actually talk about role playing and romance and RPGs in a couple weeks from now. So we'll come back to that topic.
Like a full topic.
But Kurt, you actually had a really good example of a way to use body language in an RPG that you were talking to me about earlier.
So I was listening to a panel from a previous GauntletCon about how to be a good player, and they were, one of the things that they mentioned is the two characters were fighting, right? But it was online, and so they like the player who was being berated, being yelled at, wanted the scene to continue. Like they loved that, right? They're like, yes, our characters are fighting, but like they're getting screamed at. And so they kept like, just, yep, keep it coming, like just kept moving their hand, like, do it, yes, this is good, keep yelling at me.
Without actually saying that.
Yeah, but like they just using their body language to show like, I'm into it, I like what's happening here, even though we're fighting, like I'm enjoying this exchange, so let's keep it going, right?
Well, an example of that happened to me is when we were at Strategicon this last in September. Christopher Gray was running the Great American Novel, and we were playing The Godfather, and I was playing the wife, and he was supposed to be playing my really abusive husband, and so he's like yelling at me and berating me and tearing me down, and like after the game he was like, I'm so sorry, but I'm sitting there going, like, as he's like being this horrible person to me, I'm sitting there like shaking my head because I wanted like him to know, like, you're doing exactly what a 1940s husband in the mob would do. Like, just yes, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, Christopher Gray yelled at me. Like,
it's
I understand
suitable for the campaign.
Right.
It makes sense.
And I mean, the flip side, if you're not feeling it, like showing that no body language or going for one of your safety tools if they're, whatever you've got available to you to end that scene. So, yeah. I think
could also be the middle finger.
Yeah, you could show them the middle finger and be like, nope, just nope.
It's so versatile.
The middle.
It's very versatile.
Yeah, that whole active listening and body language, reading body language thing for me is, I'm not great at that, and I know I'm not really great at that. I think of myself more of like as a tactical, tactical miniature type gamer more than a story game bullshit type gamer.
Yeah.
So like I tend to focus.
Tell us how you really feel, or is this?
No, I tend to focus more
bullshit.
like on the mat. I focus more on the mechanics of the game and on like the situation that the minis are in. So like a lot of my attention, I'm focusing like on the mat. Like, okay, I can do this move next turn. I'm gonna do this move. I can do this ability and cast this spell. Do this and that.
You're a tactical player.
Yeah, so when people are like doing their conversing and their role playing, I'm like focused on the mat, and then I look up and it's like, what happened? Why are you guys fighting now?
I think it's funny that you say that, because there have been some very specific moments of you role playing that I've thought have been incredibly spectacular, and they've been very like, I don't know, really cool moments and stuff where you were role playing. And so I always think it's funny when you're like, I like the tactical part better, because when you do let yourself really get into a character, your role playing is actually really entertaining and interesting. And I think that an example of this using body language where you say, no, it doesn't work, would be an example where my character died and you screamed at the person sitting next to you about the fact that I had just died, right? You were really in character. You're supposed to be my brother-in-law, and I just died. You were really upset, and you yelled. Well, the person next to you took that as you yelling at them like for reals, and was super upset by the fact that they had just gotten yelled at, even though it was in character, and that person made it very clear that was not okay, like being yelled at. And I think that's where the body language thing is really important, that like, just as much as you're like, yes, it's fine that this is happening, it's also cool to be like, yeah, no, even in character, do not yell at me. This is not okay, right? Like, so yeah, I mean,
and that particular player was very new to RPGs.
I don't feel like that's fair to RPG though. Like, if you're not gonna be allowed to express an emotion of a character dying, I don't know, then you need to get good, or just
But no, well, I wouldn't say that. I mean,
Well,
people have their own triggers, right? And
Right.
if you don't want someone berating you, then that's not going to be acceptable behavior. It's not something we knew about, but as soon as they expressed that to us, like that scene ended, right?
Yeah, well,
Like, we
it
didn't
didn't end,
continue
but
to scream at them.
we definitely changed the focus of that moment.
Yeah.
Right.
But
That's
yeah, I
fine.
mean, everybody's
That
gonna
makes-
have triggers that we, and you've got to do
Here-
your best.
Here's
to...
what I will say in defense of Handor, and I guess this is a GM thing too, is if you are I'm not going to use the term sensitive, but maybe you're a little bit more sensitive than others about particular things, it's it's on the GM to make sure that they try and find out what those things are before they go into a scene or go into a particular game that might have something traumatic happen. But you as a player, it is also your responsibility to make sure that that's clear to the players at the table and the GM as well, if there's a particular thing that you're not comfortable with too. So take the initiative, if the GM doesn't do it for you, to be very clear on what those things are. Like, hey, I don't really want any like super conflict or aggression or murder or
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think that goes back to our intro of role playing that we did back in June. Definitely go back and look at those episodes. But we talk about like using your safety tools and talking about what exactly you're comfortable with and how to use the X card and how to use veils and all that kind of stuff. And so going back and watching our intro to role playing would really, I think, help if you did that with this episode as well, because that's where we did talk about those safety tools, that it is important to discuss it as a table, like, hey, I've got this thing and we cannot cross it, right?
And if, of course, if something comes up, because you don't always know what's gonna be a problem at the beginning of the game, that's why you have things like the X card. Of course, that was sort of early on in our gaming, and we didn't have those tools on the table,
right?
And so that's a change that we've kind of made over the course of learning more about those safety tools.
So the point being is that when setting up a game, right, you need to set all these boundaries and make sure that the space that you're creating is a very safe space of comfortableness, and allow people to say, look, I'm not comfortable with this, and I don't have to explain why, but this is something that we don't have to get into, blah blah blah, and it's just the way it is. Just make sure that.
I mean, I think the more comfortable everybody feels in the group, the more open they'll be to just let themselves be their characters, because they don't feel like they have to like be on guard in case something they're not comfortable with comes up.
Right.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah. So let's move into the next section here, which is kind of collaboratively telling a story. And I know some of this can be like specifically story game bullshit stuff, but it also incorporates into tactical games when you're creating a story too, because like these are tools that aren't just for story games.
I mean, I will admit that this section is probably more story game bullshit than some of the other sections.
We're gonna give it to Kurt anyway.
I just love that story game bullshit is now an official term.
He called it that first.
He called it that first.
Give me more self-indulgent story game bullshit. I want it.
He did it to himself. We can keep
showing you the body language that says I want the story game
And
bullshit.
it's not a bad thing.
Or is
No,
that his
of
word?
course not. It's just fun.
Yeah, is that your word, but we're not allowed to use it?
I don't know. I'm not pulling any of that.
Okay, good. Bullshit.
I'm not gonna say that. No.
Okay.
I do not get to claim that.
It's gonna be a T-shirt. Give me some of that story game bullshit.
Yeah.
So, how do you recognize when it's your turn to contribute to a story? How do you recognize that?
Everyone's looking at you and not talking.
Okay.
So there's that. That's a great way to know.
All right.
What are some other ways?
I don't know, man. I think you as a character should, if you've invested time in your character and kind of fleshed out what your character is and your personality, you should be pretty self-aware of when your character would step in. You know what I mean?
So
I think that's part of the character and the players. You'll know that it'll feel right. Like, hey, I have something. My character. You're dealing with something of Oreztes' example. You're discussing something of a tactical nature, and your character is the more tactical person. Then, of course, you should be a large part of that conversation in that scene, because that is what your character knows. That's what they're aware of. That's their craft, right? So it's about being self-aware about the scene you're in and the kind of the character you've created for yourself. In my opinion.
Or if I was gonna say, or if you're the rogue of the group and someone mentions the crown jewels, you're like, what? Me? Yep.
Right.
Someone said jewels.
Oh yeah, we're big on that. Like ears perk up. Like, sorry, what?
Or like if you're Nightson and somebody's like, "Oh yeah, there's some loot over there," and then you just dibs.
So that goes back to active listening then, right? Like
Yeah, it does. For sure.
you want to be listening to the flow of the game, paying attention for times when your character would be useful, or you find something that's like, oh, hey, this was probably put here for me, right? Or someone is introducing an element that would be specifically relevant to my character.
And it doesn't even need to contribute. I think that's a big misconception, too. Sometimes the most fun stuff that happens is not something that's obvious. Like, I remember there was a game we were playing one time with Nightson's character who was like a kleptomaniac, right? And so we'd be having some super serious conversation about some really incredibly important stuff, like lives or anything, and then all of a sudden you hear stuff clanging in the background, and Nightson's literally looting the fucking place. Like, and everyone just stops. So, like, does it contribute necessarily? No, but it makes the story more interesting. Now we have to deal with that shit in the middle of everything else. So it doesn't need to necessarily be obvious. If it'll be fun and it adds flavor, if it adds color to the scene, I say if it feels right, just do it. Just let what's going to happen. It doesn't even need to be positive all the time.
Oh, it definitely doesn't need to be positive for me.
That's
I
some of
love
the most
it
interesting stuff is the bad stuff.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I love it when like negative character traits or something is like causing issues. Of course, you want to make sure that everybody at the table is cool with that style of play, but
and we were well aware that Nightson was going to steal shit.
We knew it was happening.
Yeah.
Am I way out of line here to say that even throughout this topic as RP, it's so relatable to me for
for a
getting
newer player? Yeah, for sure.
No. Listen, let me finish.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay, Kanye,
So-
get it?
Yeah. This is so relatable to me in the aspect that I'm single, and this reminds me of like every fresh relationship that I've had. Right? When you want to know whether or not there's signs, you want to read body language, whether or not it's okay to go for the first kiss, or whether or not it's okay to go, for those. How she feels about when you go for that lower back touch when she's going through the door. That's what a lot of this RP sounds like to me.
That's actually the least crazy analogy you've ever used on this show.
Yeah.
How do I know when it's okay to rifle through her drawers and?
You're
It's never okay. To be clear, that is never okay. Don't do that. No, I think that's
is
true.
that you're still like dating RPGs. Like you haven't quite committed to it. You're still trying.
Well, I mean, that transitions into my next thing, which is how to keep consent in mind when adding to a scene.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the things we talked about in active listening, right? Looking for body language. If you are going to do something to another character, like your character's like, oh, he decides he's in love and he's going to kiss him. Like,
well, I don't
and that
even think
character,
it has
that
to
player
be,
is not into it.
I don't think it necessarily has to be a romantic thing. It could be like, I decided I'm going
your
to
boots.
make Handor go invisible, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Oh yeah.
Like if I just made that decision and you were like, what the fuck are you doing? Like I'm trying to do a thing here. And now I'm imposing something on your character that you did not consent to. It doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic relationship. It could be like, we're playing Savage Worlds and Nightson decides to cast Puppet on me or something. Like that's not
Pineapple. Pineapple.
Devil's advocate, and I know I'm going to have an unpopular position here, but I disagree with that to an extent. I don't feel like every decision you make that interacts with other player needs to be an open metagame discussion, just to make sure that every player at the table is cool with it. Like, if I want to invis you because it makes sense, I don't feel like I should ask for permission to do that. If there are repercussions of that, then I need to just own up to that and say, oh, you were doing something, I screwed it up. Well, I fucked it up. Now we got to deal with the repercussions of that. But.
Yeah.
Right. I think if you have those safety tools in place and you do something like that and they exit, right? Like they tap the X card because they're like, this is not cool. Then that's when the discussion gets triggered, right?
Is someone really? I mean, does that happen? I have to ask this question. Does that happen? People use an X card because you invisibility someone without consent?
No, but I mean, if you were trying to mind control another player,
okay, well, that's different. You're affecting their agency, of course.
Right.
I get that.
You're taking away their agency.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, the example is Adelaide made Forrest invisible, and then he went swinging around and knocked over a bunch of trash cans and made a bunch of noise, and it was all useless anyway. But it was still funny that I made him invisible, and I didn't really need his consent to make him invisible, right? Like that wasn't a moment where I took away his player agency. But I think the consent comes when you're imposing something permanent or taking away the character's agency, right?
That I
Well,
totally
this-
understand.
This is actually something that you see a lot more in the story game bullshit variety. Most more mechanical based games have a I'm going to do something to you. You have some way to stop it mechanically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like mechanical safety nets.
But when you are doing this in a purely story game bullshit version where it's just, hey, I add this to the scene and now something is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't really the tools outside of that meta discussion.
Right.
So it's kind of you
The safety tools are really necessary in story games
bullshit.
because you basically just give players narrative control, right? There is no saving throw, whatever, right? Like you don't have that kind of mechanical safety net to fall back on.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that is because I don't play with a lot of random people. We've kind of all been playing together. We kind of know each other's temperaments and what we're sensitive about and whatnot. So I don't experience this, but I'm like out in the world. If you go to a lot of cons, like I was just curious if that was a thing.
It's going to depend on community.
Well,
because there is a universe of people that do the RPG thing, right? And they're doing this consistently because they're wanting to meet new people, right? And they're constantly just going to new places, new venues, new whatever, and just sitting down playing with a complete group of strangers.
Sure.
and I think that's a very good point, is that the difference in knowing the people you're playing with and not knowing them, right? Because we all know our limits kind of within this group because we've been playing together for so long and we're finding whatever Handors are, but like the rest of us, like we've been playing long enough that we know each other's limits and we're not going to push too hard on those things. But when you do sit down at a table with either new players or at a convention, you kind of have to keep a lot of these things like more towards the forefront because you don't have that familiarity with them, and you can't just kind of lean back on 10 years of friendship to know
and you don't have that trust, right? You haven't built up trust for them to say like, well, this might go somewhere interesting. I'm going to give them a little leeway to see where it goes.
So let's move on to our discussion about what is yes and how it can be used.
Okay, so yes and is it is a concept from improv where anytime something is added to the shared narrative, to the fiction or to the scene of an improv scene, you say yes. You accept that is real. Like if someone says, we're in a car and puts their hands out, you don't say, no, we're on a bicycle. You say, yes, and the top is down and my hair is blowing in the wind. And so the yes is you accept the new information as true, and then you add something onto it and make it more interesting. Of course, in RPGs, the way I see yes and, it does not mean you're dead, yes, and I rot. Like, it doesn't mean that they can just take away your agency. It means you are in a tavern, yes, and the beer is hot. Like, that kind of thing, right? And so I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on yes and. I know Oreztes has expressed some issues with yes and from a player's perspective. So I'm really curious how you guys feel about it. But my way of thinking is that you accept the fiction as it is, yes, and then add something interesting to it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think for me, the yes and is one extreme of a scale. So like what I was telling you guys the other day in Discord, like my grandma had a license plate on her truck that was yeah, but. And so I asked her, I was like, what does that mean? And she was like, this is, what you say when you get caught doing something and you're about to give an excuse. It's like, did you do the thing? Yeah, but this is the reason. Like, this is my excuse. So for me, this all is part of a scale. So there's like yes and, which is like, yes, that happened, and here's a positive thing that goes along with it. And then the next thing would be like, yeah, but. It's like, yes, that happened, but here's a negative thing that went with it. And then the next would be no, but. It's like, no, that thing didn't happen, but a positive. And then no, and would be no, that thing didn't happen, and a negative. So to me, there's like a 4-part scale to that whole yes and thing. So, because it's like, I mean, called shot head. So it'd be like, yes, you hit him in the head and you killed him because you hit him right in the face and his head exploded.
I mean, that's when the mechanics come in, though.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, but would be like, yeah, you hit him in the head, but you didn't beat his toughness, so it didn't really hurt him.
Right. So,
right?
I mean...
So to me, that's like a whole scale. So the yes and strictly yes anding is to me more of like a DM tool than like necessarily strictly a player tool. I think players have a lot more leeway with this whole scale that is kind of in my
Well,
head.
I think what Kurt's. I don't want me to speak for you,
Go
but I
ahead.
think the idea is, especially when you start off by saying that this is based off of a what's that called? The
Improv.
like, yeah, the improv, like whose line is it anyway? Type,
Yeah.
type. Uh, it takes practice to be able to do that, and if players are capable of doing that and just taking it out of the hands of, not really taking it out of the hands of the DM, but being able to take responsibility and create a narrative that flourishes and is very organic and is like wonderful, right? And all so yes, and allows the DM to propose something and the characters to finalize it or
Take it
create
and run
around
with
it.
it.
So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the caveat with yes and in RPGs is that yes and stops as soon as the mechanics get triggered, right? If you say I shoot you in the head, then it's yes and roll the dice, right? And then we'll see what happens. But if you say, I'm riding a black horse, I mean, why would you say no? It's a donkey. Like why? You know what I mean? Like, you'd be like, no, but you're riding a black donkey. Like
So
that can happen if maybe there's no horses in this world,
can,
right?
can I give an example? And I'm going to ask for end of line's permission to tell a bad player story that involves you. Is that okay with you
Oh,
for me
yeah,
to
go
call you
for it.
out right now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I'm asking
There's
for
so
permission.
many to choose.
Getting your consent.
Which one
so-
will it be?
So my, and it's not that you're a bad player. There's just
Oh, I
there-
am.
we
I'm a
all
totally
have-
bad player.
We all have examples of times when we've done bad things, right?
Mhm.
So in Westfall Follies, when we played the Halloween game, Handor's character came up to you and said that his nephew had gone missing. He never came home from school and he needed your help, right?
Mhm.
And instead of yes anding that, saying, "Oh my gosh, he's missing, let's go," you said, "Why would I come help you look for him? It's only been 3 hours." So you shut down the role play, you shut down the narrative instead of adding to it.
Mhm.
And so I think that's an example of where the yes and of that moment would be to continue he presented you with information and you continue the story. The opposite of that was you going, "It's not a big deal that he's missing." And that's where you shut down his role playing, right? And so that's the other side of that coin of yes and. By saying, "Why would I care about this?" you're not furthering the narrative. And so that's, I think, where yes and comes in as a player. It's not necessarily that you're making a statement about the call, we're in a car, and you're like, "No, we're not." Sometimes it's just, I'm presenting you with the information that I've gathered in the RPG, and you're going to go, "Okay, I'm going to take your information and we're going to continue this narrative." Or I'm going to take that information and go, "I don't care about it."
So bad players,
You know?
bad players. Now here's the and but. Here's my thought process, right or wrong, in that particular setting, and this is where things get kind of fuzzy. It's like I happen to be playing the intellectual character, the book smart kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm thinking, if I'm in my character, I'm thinking rationally. This person's coming to me freaked out because their brother's missing for 3 hours. I don't think a rational person's like, "Oh my God, drop everything! He's been kidnapped. He's been gone for 3 hours. Like, why is he?" Like, I'm
No,
expecting
but
Handor to tell me
as-
why 3 hours gone. Why is this? Hey, he's gone. You know what I mean?
Right. But on one hand, you could have, instead of saying that doesn't matter, you could have tried to calm him down, right?
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
say, "It's okay. Let's give me more information," instead of just saying that's not important. Or because you're playing an RPG game, you just go with it to continue the narrative.
Or you could, or I mean, I guess the narrative could have been even created to do something else, to where we're looking for solutions on his computer, or where the narrative could have been local to wherever I was speaking to him, as opposed
Right.
to having him come search or whatever it was that I was requesting. think.
Right. I think, and I use that as my example. It's not, I mean, that wasn't like the worst role-playing story, but it's just when you're presented with information, instead of shutting down the narrative, it's adding to it to continue the story.
If you
That's
have the
something
option
that's
between
interesting.
improving the storyline for everyone and moving
Right.
the story along, or causing it to slow down or halt or get complicated with no benefit,
Right.
it's better to opt towards making the story more better.
Well,
than making
ultimately,
it more difficult.
if it goes in the direction of, well, I just go home and don't participate in this adventure, you might
Right.
want to err on the side of the other option.
Yeah, it's like sometimes we do things in RPGs that you're like, I don't know if I would necessarily do this, but we're playing a game, we're playing an RPG game, and if I don't do this, my character's just going to go home. And so I'm going to decide my character would do this thing because we are playing a game. And I think that's where that yes and comes in, where you're like, yes, I'm going to do the thing, even though maybe I wouldn't necessarily do this in real life because we're playing an RPG game.
Well, it's like every horror movie you've ever seen. People make ridiculous decisions for no good reason.
Oh yeah.
Because if everybody in a horror movie was smart, horror movies wouldn't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you guys think you can make sure all characters in a game get something out of the scene that they're doing?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the truth is sometimes you can't. There is always going to be a point where this arc or this particular venue is not relevant at all. You know, if you have a, and this kind of falls more on the GM side to remedy, but you have to allow the GM to do it. Like, for example, if you are hogging the spotlight, for lack of a better term, and this is a heavy RP session with me and the GM doing something, whatever it may be, acknowledging, okay, 5 other people are not participating, maybe I can pull it back and let's do something else. But
I think what I like to do is try to figure out how to invite other people into a scene, or ask if I can join a scene that I feel like I could add to, even though I wasn't there initially. But I think a really good one is to be like, hey, I think I probably would have asked you to come with me, right? Just to like drag another character along to whatever the story or the scene is going to be. Even though like as a player, I'd be like, no, I would totally go do this thing by myself. Sometimes I choose to ask somebody to come with me just so there's more than one person participating in whatever the thing is that's going on.
Right.
A prime example of that is when we were first heading into the lair of the pet hat wearers in Dungeon World. Spoilers. And we were gonna face the final lady or whatever, and we were walking down it was like a long hallway where Oreztes had already made his way, and I believe Nightson had actually already been invited or made his way in there as well. You and I were kind of in the back in the hallway still. You had kind of started heading down the hallway, and Forrest is just like,
What do I do?
you know, what do I? Yeah, and it wasn't until because I'm just so immersed in the story, listening to this lady, you know, talk about the number of ways that she's gonna murder Nightson and everyone else, that I realized that my character, when you had said, I grab Forrest and I bring him along with me, I'm like, oh yeah, I probably should be heading down this hallway instead of just leaning on this barrel against the wall.
Right, which I do a lot. I say, okay, well, I grab Forrest and we're going to go whatever. Because you're a new player, and I figure, like, sometimes you don't know how to take the steering wheel and say, okay, this is the direction we're going.
For sure.
But I know you want to be a part of the action. It's like, all right, well, I'm just going to grab him and we're going to go. Right? And so that's how you get to make sure that other characters are part of scenes.
So coming back to the how to make sure all characters get something out of a scene, my story game bullshit answer is to ask the player what they would want to see in a scene. And it might be like, my rogue is searching for traps in this hallway, and we're going to be boringly rolling stuff. But while the GM is checking numbers, I might look at another character and say, hey, weren't you like a soldier in some war or something? Cool. And then start up like talking to them about their backstory so that they can at least be part of the scene, even if they're not currently searching for traps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the story game bullshit answer.
Yeah.
I
for
feel
me.
like sometimes there's just not going to be anything for you to do, and sometimes as a player you just have to be willing to accept it because
yeah.
like, we're doing Shadowrun, and it's it's a scene about hacking and being inside the Matrix. What's a martial artist going to do? It's like, what are you doing? I'm just hanging out here watching this guy use the computer. I don't know. There's nothing.
Right.
So you
And
just
there
have
were
to
scenes
let
like
the
that.
player.
I mean,
Yeah,
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
that does happen.
So when those kinds of things happen, how do we manage the spotlight? How do we make it so that, like Nightson said, like when you're kind of being the scene stealer, you're being the attention whore. How do you manage that spotlight as players so that you're not taking up all the time, or that you get the time that you feel like
the
you
bulk
deserve?
of that's going to go to the GM,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
But
Yeah.
I think the other part of that is not forcing the issue. If I have just spent 30 minutes RPing with someone and doing this, or hogging because I'm doing the important thing right now, and you break away to go hand off the spotlight to someone else, not 5 minutes later going, oh, and this, and jumping in and going, I want the spotlight back.
Get your popcorn and watch this person's scene.
As far as the
for
GM,
sure.
it's got to be you think about how you're going to respond to that. Let's get back to these guys, and then you just kind of jump between, making sure that you're not neglecting one subset of the party too long, and then you kind of go back and forth for a little while until those things reconcile and you get back together.
Yeah,
Sometimes the only thing you can do.
I have been in games where I've noticed like the GM isn't managing the spotlight very well, and so I will do things like I'll ask another player if they think their character would be in the scene, like Gigett was saying, like I'll just bring this person with me, right? And then that way we can have like whatever our thing is going to be about, like they can still get some spotlight if they're like being left out. But I mean, what do you guys think?
I feel like also managing the spotlight, and I know that I'm definitely guilty of this. I am a scene stealer. I am an attention whore when it comes to RPGs. Nightson and I talk about this quite a bit, that we both are like, I want to be the one talking. And then we have to manage that one that wants to be involved by saying, you know what, I was in a lot. I'm going to sit back and just let whatever this is happen. I don't need to be a part of this cool thing, even though I really want to be, because it's their turn to have the spotlight, even though I really want to be a part of it. Like, it's okay to say, like, all right, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to grab my popcorn and watch the action, even though I'm not in it, and still enjoy the game, because now I'm getting to watch my friends do cool things too.
And I think a lot of that also has to do with the willingness to sit back and let other people have the spotlight.
I was just going to say, so from a very new person's perspective, I look at this and I have to say that realistically, I understand, or I think that people should understand, that their character isn't always going to be even in the scene, right? If you're watching a movie or you're watching a TV show, there are just scenes where the character's not there, and that's fine. And it's almost necessary, I think, sometimes in order to really enrich in a story, to almost remove a certain character that may otherwise be, like Oreztes had given example to. When that character is not not provide anything to that plot or that narrative, it's best to just almost say, as a character, I would think, to just sit back and
I'll speak to people in from the player's perspective, because I do agree with Kurt. I think most of that is a GM responsibility.
Absolutely.
And I will speak to Kurt. Kurt does that very well. He's very good about us cutting back and forth between scenes to make sure that no one's sitting idle for too long. And it helps a lot. But I would say from a player perspective, if you're someone that has been playing for a while, especially if you're playing with newer players, take some responsibility to pull them with you. Create a scene that's specifically for them so they get to engage more, because they may not feel necessarily comfortable to initiate that on their own. So kind of create and mold that for them to pull them into it. It helps a lot, and it'll get engaged, and then there'll be more initiative to doing it in the future.
Be sure to use your active listening to make sure they're comfortable with being in the spotlight.
Might have to be in the spotlight.
Yeah,
Just get him
that's
involved.
True though.
Yeah, don't shove Oreztes into the spotlight unless he actually
Well,
wants it.
prime example, the Nightson situation where he was stealing the stuff. You know, what if you had a newer player that was with Nightson's? He's like, you know, he's showing him all the shiny stuff, and Nightson's like, hey, look at this goblet, and throws it to the new player. Now the new player gets caught, and he's like, oh. Well, now they're in a situation where they have to react, right? You've kind of pulled them in. Now they're involved.
You've created more story.
Yeah.
This is something that I think if people are serious about understanding and want to know more and are really interested in this topic, in this spotlight topic tonight, they could really honestly get a lot and learn a lot from Kurt DMing our Dungeon World series. Honestly, go back and watch him and how he and how Gigett and Nightson and Oreztes, how they envelop Forrest and allow his character to
We kind of shove you into the story.
yeah, for sure. How you guys how you guys manage Forrest as me being a new RPer.
Yeah.
Because you guys do a really fantastic job of all of those issues.
And I will add, to prevent him from getting a big head, he's absolutely terrible, and he gives preferential treatment to everyone.
Suck.
Yep, and Kurt sucks. And
$5.
Yeah, let me get my wallet out.
Yeah. Better
Sorry.
for real though. Anyways.
Well, I was going to go back to that Shadowrun example. If you're in a game where you know there's specialization, like D&D has specialization, Shadowrun has specialization. Mm-hmm. If you are the wet work person and you're coming up with the plan, or whoever's coming up with the plan, and you look down and you go, shit, we have a decker and they have nothing to do. As a player, no GM is going to say that you can't make shit harder for yourself. So if you look at the GM and go, oh, but we're going to need those license keys or whatever. So-and-so, you got to get those license keys. The GM is going to be like scribbling that shit down like, yeah, that's going to be tough too. Cause
we actually had that exact example in the Shadowrun game. Remember, one of our players was, and they were kind of left out, and we were like, hey, we need fake license plates. You need to get into the DMV and get all these license plates to put on our vans we're hijacking. Because we basically stole a whole fleet of vans to build a business.
So we blew up half a fleet and stole the other half.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
but we created that scenario for him.
This goes to what ways can you contribute to make other players and other characters feel cool, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, what can you do that makes you're going to do stuff to make yourself look cool, but what can you contribute to other players? And I think, honestly, this is probably like Oreztes' like specialization is making the other characters better or look cool or have that moment where there's the explosion behind them or whatever. Like, you are the number one support,
just play support
in all games.
Well, and it goes beyond that. Like, you can engineer situations where characters will become the spotlight. For example, the entire last episode of our Dungeon World game was completely engineered by me to give Forrest a arena setting to punch somebody in the face.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to see that happen.
Spoilers.
So that's all you need to do is just completely devote your entire play session to making Forrest look better.
Yep.
Well, and it was a long time coming because Forrest had his ass beat through
bunch of times.
All
that
the time.
Entire.
It's not a bunch of times. It was all the time.
Yeah, it was like the first 3 games he was unconscious. It was so easy to steal from him. I got bored.
Yep.
That's why I had to make a new character.
So the next section we have here is understanding the game and your character. And I think that becomes a very important part of being a good player, because if you don't know how to play your character, then how can you be a good player, right?
So my first note here, I'm going to say this one, then I'm going to let it go, is understanding and accepting the core conceit of the game. A core conceit is something like, this movie takes place in space, right? And so you're going to be like, okay, cool, these characters are in space. If someone says, you are going to play characters who got on a boat to an island, make characters who want to get on a boat and go to an island, and we start the first game and you look at me and say, but why would my character go to the island? I don't want to talk. Like, that character goes home, and your new character, let me get the piece of paper, and then you can make one that did want to go to the island. So most people have sort of like a discussion before they make characters, and they make sure you know if there are core conceits. Like, there's gonna be a lot of undead in this game, or
we're
all
evil.
gonna play paladins, or we're gonna be evil.
Right. I mean, that was the thing with Nightson's 4th ed game, right? Like, we all kind of went, okay, we're all evil, right?
Yeah,
and
everyone's gonna be evil.
And then we all played evil characters. Nobody went, no, I'm gonna be good.
I don't know though, because Oreztes' character was not really evil.
Oh,
he wasn't. He wasn't
yeah,
good.
he was.
He just
wasn't good.
He didn't do anything himself.
Yeah, he was lazy. Like
he poured acid down people's throats. He was evil.
He wasn't gonna get his hands dirty. That
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah, but that was the
difference.
point. His first mission was to get his hands dirty, just to prove that he could.
Yeah.
Well.
But that's accepting the core conceit of a game. Like, we all decided we were getting on a boat and going to an island, so these are the characters we need to make because we all chose to adventure, or we're all evil, or
don't make a paladin if you know you're doing the evil campaign.
And I just want to point out that going on a boat, knowing that we're going on a boat to an island, and making a character that does not have swimming or boating does not mean I was not going along with your plan.
No.
No, I didn't have
when you
swimming
write
or
your
boating
backstory, make sure they have a reason and want to go to the thing that we said everyone is going to.
And honestly, I think even if you made the character that was like, I got kidnapped and ended up in the belly of the boat, and then it's like, oh my god, I'm on an island. Like, you're still in line with the core conceit that we are going to an island and this is how you ended up there.
Yeah.
Even if your character is like, oh, I'm on an island.
Yeah.
Like, you're still writing a backstory that fits the narrative, right?
So that's core conceits, and I'll let that go because that's one of my biggest pet peeves. Is when someone is like, yeah, no, we're all evil, and then they show up with their pink paladin, and you're like, oh god damn it.
So the next thing is knowing who your character is and what did you write?
What do you want to learn about them?
Oh, and what do you want to learn about them? So I think wanting to know what their wants, their drives, and their personality are. Like, you don't necessarily have to have a full backstory or know exactly where they're headed or have all these huge details about them, but picking a few personality traits. Like, these are my drives. My drives are
those are
stay alive and chop down trees. Like, whatever. Like, by knowing what you want for your character, you're able to be consistent as your character through the game instead of making off the wall decisions and going, your character wouldn't do that. Like,
I kind of feel like less is more when it comes to
I agree.
I agree with that too.
But
having a general motivation and an understanding of your character's personality, my feelings are, if you have that in check before the game starts, the other people at the table are going to have more fun too. Because part of the fun of RPGs is character development, and if you don't even know your character's development, they're not going to learn your character development.
And
that's part of what I really like about like the what's the PBTA is the bonds at the beginning. It's like you don't have to come up with a lot. The bonds give you a large part of what you need right off the bat. It's just
the fate system, I think, did that really well too.
I was going to say the exact same. I was going to say my favorite thing about the fate system is I don't even remember what they call it. Aspects. Seven very not necessarily quick, but story beats of who you are, where you came from, and why the hell you're here today.
And that gives the GM so much ammunition too.
Yes. But I think it's also important to understand that your character can change over time.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you understand your wants and your drives and the personality of your character, and then they go through some crazy shit, it's also okay that those things change as your character changes, right? Because
go ahead.
You have to start somewhere to know that you have changed.
That's why I started writing them as questions rather than my character is this and he should be this by the end, because now you've made a lot of choices about the path for your character, and you become pretty rigid when you're making choices. So I've started writing character backgrounds as, will they overcome their, crippling fear of spiders, or will they succumb to the darkness of their, dark pact?
Will Gigett force yet another character to depart from the party?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. Murder hobo hypocrite. That's Gigett.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh,
She's a
my
murder hobo
character
hypocrite.
changed over time.
She
That's
wasn't
the
a she
point.
wasn't actually
I was
that
a
much of a
pacifist
murderer
in the
until
beginning.
everyone said it was.
I feel like as soon
Um,
as you give somebody a 50 caliber sniper rifle, they're gonna have to start using it.
Duh.
Sniper rifle.
So, what are some tips for making choices as a character?
Do it make sense for the character? And that goes back to knowing your character's motivations and their background. If it makes sense for them and it feels right, you should do it.
And honestly, I think sometimes it's okay to brainstorm with a GM out loud and say, like, do you think, I mean, based on who my character has been so far, do you think that it's in line that my character would go this direction? Because sometimes we get all in our head about choices and being consistent and all that kind of shit. And so we have to say it out loud and then have the GM go, yeah, no, that totally would make sense that your character like has seen some shit and now becomes like a murderer, even though they were a pacifist before, right? Like those
Stop
it's
rationalizing your behavior.
Read the body language.
Read the body language, Knights. That no,
Active
okay.
listening.
That's actually
so-
kind of isn't that technically sign language? But anyways,
Oh, I'll show you
Fingers are
some
part of
sign
your
language.
body.
So the next thing here is knowing what mechanics of the game are relevant to your character. And I think this is a very important one, especially when you're playing a trad game and there's like combat mechanics that you need to know.
And
If
people
you
have
know how-
work in the morning.
right? And if on Monday, if you know how to play, even if you don't know how to use the entire system because you're a new player, totally fine. But if your character does like this weird specific thing that the other characters don't do, you should know how to do how your sneak attack works. Like you should know how to use your character, even if you don't know how anybody else's character
If you're
works.
playing a grappler, you need to know the grappling rules.
This
Right.
is where
Yeah.
I am the worst player.
Yeah, most traditional games are broken into chapters for a reason.
Yeah.
Like usually there is here's core mechanics or stuff that the DM probably taught you day one of here's how to roll your dice and add modifiers.
Yeah.
And then there's the combat chapter, which is probably also explained to you by the DM, just core how to play. But if you are a hacker or a mage or a specialty character who uses interesting rules, please know how to cast a spell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and that's the next thing here is to know what you're going to do on your turn, or when the spotlight is on your character, what you're going to do. Like, be prepared and know what you're going to do. Sometimes that's knowing the mechanics of your character in combat, and sometimes it's, okay, well, when their scene ends, this is what I'm going to do on my scene. It doesn't really have anything to do with mechanics, but I'm prepared when the spotlight hits me that this is what I'm going to do next. That way you're not fumbling around.
And know what you can do on your turn, right? Like
Yeah.
if some games are pretty limiting by mechanics, like know where you're going to bump into mechanics, if that's something that's going to happen, and know like here's the way, here's a thing I can do that does not engage the mechanics. Like I can talk to this shopkeep all day long, but like if it's going to end up coming down to a single roll, like maybe trigger that shit early and then you do that, based on the roll, so you don't like just know what's available to you.
Yep.
Especially if it's a story game, because it might be whatever you want. Like try to think of shit like that is
Well, I think
relevant.
like when you're painting the scene, right? And
Yeah.
everybody's going to go around and add something like the flags or the statues or the whatever, like make up your thing. So by the time the GM comes around to say like, okay, so what do you see in this marketplace? You can say, furry weird creatures, birds with teeth, like whatever, like just be prepared to add your weird thing to the scene, even in a small moment, like painting the scene, so that, the story keeps moving and we're not hanging up on people's like, oh, I wasn't paying attention. So it goes back to active listening.
And one advantage of actually knowing your character and the mechanics that are tied to it, you can find the pitfalls, the things that take way longer than they should, just because maybe the mechanics aren't clean. And you can probably work out something with your DM to quicken that process. One of the things that always was a very sore spot in our Shadowrun game was summoning. Summoning took an incredible amount of time. And so we ended up working out a system that basically it was the 2 or 3 summoners we had at the table could quickly summon and it's just like, hey, I'm summoning this. That's what we're doing. Great.
Well, yeah, I think at one point you got to a point where like you guys were summoning whatever you're going to summon later in the game. You did all the mechanics before we actually started the story, and then it's like, okay, when we get to the point where you summon, you had done everything that you did that like 20 minutes before we actually sat down, and so the rest of us could get snacks while the three of you were summoning your shit. And then like, okay, we're going to start the game, and when you're like, oh, hey, I summoned my thing, it's like, okay, cool, because you've already done all that before everybody else had to sit down at the table.
And if you're playing support, know what everybody can do and who you're going to have do the thing.
That is something you are very good at. So in summation here, Kurt, would you like to run through your bullet points of player principles that kind of like summarizes everything we've talked about?
Yeah. So my player principles are: be attentive when it's not your turn.
Yes, please.
Look for ways to add to the story. Say yes to the fiction and add something new. Look for ways to bring other players into the story. Be aware of the possible ramifications to your actions. Help make the other players' characters feel cool, which is great when you're support. That's like their whole job. Know your character and know what you can do on your turn and what mechanics are necessary to do it.
Yep. There we go.
That sounds pretty on
So
point.
before we kind of wrap it up here tonight, does anybody have any final thoughts on being a good player? Anything we didn't cover that you want to toss in there?
Support is the best role in every game ever. Do that.
The thing I would add is all of these rules, quote unquote, can be broken in a table that is cool with it.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's just being aware of your audience, your fellow friends or your con mates. If you're comfortable in a group and you are perfectly cool with one of your characters, one of the players at the table taking an entire 4-hour session to RP, great. And if everyone's happy, awesome.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah, if it's
maybe
an
not
awesome
con-
scene to like watch and listen
Yeah.
to, then
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah, I feel like Battle of the Bands wasn't planned out, but it's definitely what we did in that game, and we were all okay with it.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the most random shit. Yeah,
But it was really fun, and we were all like, yeah, sure, okay, Kurt, we're gonna go along with it. Thanks, Nightson, for
I wasn't
jamming
running that game. I was just like, hey, eventually we're gonna have to go
No.
steal my band equipment.
No, Nightson was running it, but you're the one that was like, we gotta do this, guys, and we all went, I guess that's what we're doing tonight.
and everybody was okay with setting up trade routes through space, except for the GM, and that game lasted all of one session.
No, 3. There were 3 sessions before I gave up on you guys. 3.
So I do want to add one more thing, which is don't be afraid to ask questions and to jump in and have a meta discussion about, like, if you feel you know, what are we trying to do here? Why is this scene happening? Like, what's happening? You know, if you are if it is unclear what's happening, feel free to stop and ask.
Well,
Because
if you're the kind of player where you absolutely have, like, your character needs to have a good reason to be doing his thing and you don't have a good reason, it is okay to step out of character, meta talk out of character and say, like, okay, I'm finding it really hard as a character to care about what's going on. Let's discuss maybe where my character could find the motivation for this and help get that character involved. Otherwise, why are you sitting there for 4 hours, right?
Or maybe you missed something, right? Maybe they missed the severity of something to another character that they would care about.
Right. Yeah. Talk about it.
Or maybe that's a clue of, hey, trick me into going.
Right.
Yeah.
My thing, especially for like newer players, would be.
You could
Like,
just say it.
absolutely-
You could just call me out.
No, I'm not calling you out. I'm just
That's
saying,
just
like,
you. We play with
for
a lot of new people.
Yeah, a lot of people who are new to the hobby, they want to win. So, like, don't be afraid to fail. Like, if you do something and it doesn't work, just let it happen. Like
Sometimes
in
it's
Savage
interesting.
Worlds, in Savage Worlds, I have a stack of bennies. Never use them on myself. Only use them for other people.
Yeah.
Like,
I have
just
3
let
bennies.
failure-
I have not used them.
Yeah, just let failure happen. That's how all the best story bits happen, because something, was unexpected.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's all those 7 and 9 results, Gigett.
Ugh, fuck them.
That's where the good stuff is.
Blah! Maybe you need to roll my dice, and then you just tell me if I fail or succeed, and then that way I won't know if I failed or succeeded, and we'll just move on. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Hey, Kurt, why don't you tell people where they can find us on the internet?
People can find us all over the place. We're all over the internet. People can find us by going to pixelscandal.com and learn all sorts of information about the show, see back episodes. We now have our shows sort of parted out, so you can sort by show and see back episodes there. People can find us twitch.tv/pixelscandal, where you can follow our channel to get go live notifications. Or if you like this show and you'd like to support us, you can subscribe on Twitch. We get, that's the easiest way to support us. And if you have Twitch Prime, you can support us for free by giving us your free, or if you have Amazon Prime, you can support us for free by giving us your Twitch Prime subscription.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
Do it.
If you'd like to find us on social media, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, MeWe. We're on MeWe. I don't post there very often, but if you're into MeWe, you go there and you tell me. But yeah, at Pixel Scandal in all the places. And if you'd like to contact the show, you can do so by emailing us at pixelscandal or pixelscandal@gmail.com. Oof, saying a lot of things. And if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast as an audio feed, you can do that by searching Pixel Scandal Nerdcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, I don't know, all the places, all the podcatchers.
Turkey.
All the prod turkeys.
It's not a turkey.
You've got 7 more days.
Both Handor and I are like,
not a
turkey.
Turkey.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for watching the show tonight. We will see you next week, and hope you guys all tune in for the last stream of the Shadowrun Boston Lockdown Sunday game night tomorrow night, or tomorrow afternoon.
2 p.m.
I'm going to miss that game.
2 p.m. tomorrow, because Thanksgiving stuff's in the way, but we're doing a little earlier, so.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.